From I Am Interchange, it's the Hatch podcast series. There's a moment, a specific moment when someone decides to stop waiting for permission. Maybe it's quiet, maybe nobody's watching, but something shifts. And the path they were supposed to take starts to look a lot less interesting than the one they're about to make up entirely. Today, we're talking to two people who made that choice, in completely different directions for completely different reasons, with the same kind of unshakable commitment. Benjamin von Wong is an environmental activist and visual artist whose work is almost impossible to look away from. Giant, haunting installations built from plastic waste. Images that don't let you off the hook. His activism isn't about him, it never has been. It's about fighting for something so much larger than any one person that the work almost demands you forget who made it. He's trying to change systems, actual systems, and he's using beauty to do it. Blackbach is a neoclassical pianist, selling out concert halls and collaborating with some of the biggest names in music. Here's the thing though, nobody taught him how to do any of it. No conservatory, no formal training, no one handing him the roadmap to the rooms he now walks into like he belongs there. Because he does. He figured it out. All of it. And that self-taught, street-smart, stubbornly specific version of himself is exactly the thing that got him there. Choosing classical music when the world had a very different game in mind for him. It's also his music that's the theme for the Arco Santi podcast series. Two artists, two completely different relationships to the word change. One fighting for the planet, one rewriting who gets to sit at the piano. And somehow both asking the same question underneath it all. How do we show up and actually influence anything? Do we do it because someone is looking, or do we do it anyway? I'm Tate Chamberlain. Stay with us. Will you two tell me about your earliest memory of art and activism?
Oh, earliest moment. Pretty much being born. I started playing piano at age 4, playing classical music, and wasn't necessarily something that was completely accepted where I come from in the west side of Detroit. I didn't know at the time that what I was entering was something that I would have to be a torchbearer for. So, like I said, in the beginning, it just didn't dawn on me that this would be something that I would have to be very active about, taking a stance for all different forms of music, especially for classical music, especially being a black man in classical music, because it's not necessarily easy, especially with your friends and everything back in the day. Their friends, they're like, what are you doing in there? They're like, come play basketball. You're like, no, I'm practicing Chopin.
Yeah, but, I love that. I was thinking, as someone who likes to explore different names, and did Black Bach get embraced by you during that time?
It didn't. Like, Black Bach came on later. It's something that was created. I don't necessarily think that it's something that's created because of a certain circumstance. And that circumstance is what led to the activism. Like, me being who I am is now me taking a stance for something. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Almost a triggering moment where you had to hold fast in your own identity.
Exactly.
And there's not really a lot of negotiation around it because it's, in my experience in activism, my back is against the wall and there's just like this fierceness that I have to move through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, it started early on, not knowing that I was up against something that was going to be a challenge. My father always said, you have to be 10 times better than everyone in the room. And I never understood what that really meant. I thought I can just be just as good as everyone else in the room, but no, I had to be better because of my skin color. And like I said, I didn't know it would be something later in life that I would be a torchbearer for.
It's super interesting, like listening to your response, because I'm like, I was trying to answer the question in my head on what my earliest memory of activism was, and I found the answer changing as I was listening to your answer. And it struck me that, I don't know, maybe we need to define what activism is. Yeah. So in your case, you're basically saying that the activism comes almost just from showing up as you authentically are in an environment in which you're running counter to the common narrative.
Exactly.
But my first thought was not about that, which is funny because these days I consider myself an environmental activist. And so it's actually less about who I am, but what I'm fighting for that is larger than myself. And so my answer was, I don't know what my earliest memory was. It feels like it's something that came really later in my life. But as you were speaking, I'm like, actually, I started off as a walking Asian stereotype. I was good at math and physics. I played the violin. I did martial arts. I was like basically just quintessentially like I was good at math and physics and everything like you would expect of a standard Asian kid wearing glasses too. Right. And then when I started getting into the arts, when I picked up a camera and I started just saying, hey, this is something that anyone can do. And I ended up quitting my day job to then pursue art as a career. I was basically trying to help people pursue their dreams. And in some ways, through your lens of how you're defining activism, then that would have been maybe like my earlier rebelling against what societal expectations were of growing up and being a doctor, dentist, lawyer, or whatever, engineer, and then being something else. So that's interesting. Yeah.
I would love to know what is your initial definition of activism?
Like I think because I went to 13 different schools in 3 different countries and 3 different languages, I have this sort of like mixed identity problem where I don't necessarily feel that my identity, the way I show up in my identity is a form of activism. And so when I think of a lot of the advocates for something, it's usually for this like big cause for like policy change, or you're trying to like shape the government or an opinion of something and you want to change a system. And it's, I don't know, it always feels like something I can't associate my identity to, but that may come from a place of privilege, actually, just of not having ever felt crushed by a system in that way. So even though like my parents had all these expectations, I just ignored them and it didn't matter as much. So I never felt like it was just normal. It wasn't so much resistance as much as it was just normalized.
Good on for you for doing that. That's very brave.
But yeah, but it wasn't hard. Like I don't feel like I had to do anything other than the thing that I was doing. Whereas these days, like to be an environmental activist, I find like actually like really inconvenient. It means that I have to determine how am I going to live my life so it's in alignment with my values, and what are the compromises that I have to make, and how am I communicating these ideas out into the world. And it's a lot less about how I want to show up. It's more like how I should show up because people are looking at me and people are following me. And so it's the burden feels very different. It almost feels opposite to what you're describing.
But in what you just said there, it's similar.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wait, tell me more.
Showing up. It's important that I show up as I am because someone is looking.
Right.
And it's like, I have to be, I guess the best way I can say it is that me being authentically who I am allows others to look at me and say, oh, it's okay for me to be authentically me. And in that, it's like we're all fighting against the power in that way.
But in my case, it's like authentically, for example, I would love to just travel all over the place in business class and live these really extravagant, cool experiences. However, because I'm supposed to be an environmentalist, then this is not something that I should be advocating for and talking too much about, because I would be actually, if everyone did that, then society would get worse for it. And so I actually have the opposite problem, where there are things that I want to do that I feel compelled to do, but that I feel like as a larger society, I would be enabling a system that doesn't live up to those values. And so I associate a lot with the tension between my activism and my being as like a significantly what feels like a less healthy relationship than what you have, which is a lot more alignment. You're like saying, if I live true to myself, everything's going to work out. And I'm like, I can't live true to how I want to, because I have been brought up in a system that I'm actually trying to shift and change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. So it's funny. Wild. It's wild how the same word has like such different meanings.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I actually like where you brought it initially with just the medium of music and choice of the stereotype that a certain race is supposed to grow up in.
Yeah.
Both of you. So that wasn't what I was thinking either.
Yeah.
But it was great. A great starting point to explore our influences and the things that we stand up for through our childhood that we learn to what we can't live without.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because I think about activism for me, it starts from like a place of systemic oppression. I grew up in the inner city in a red line community in a C, the A's are the suburbs, the B's are okay, the C's, the D's don't go there. I grew up in a CD neighborhood. I went to Detroit public schools. Education wasn't great. Part of the reason why I couldn't get into certain universities or certain conservatories, I couldn't go to Berkeley, I couldn't go to Juilliard or go to Curtis Institute, wasn't because I couldn't do it. It's because the education wasn't there. So for me, having this ability or this drive, I should say this drive to be excellent despite the fact that I didn't do all these things, which are historically the way you get to this. You study music in high school, you study with a great teacher, you go to the conservatory, you compete a lot, there's a blueprint. And for me, the blueprint got completely blown up not because I didn't want to follow the blueprint, but because it wasn't available. So now me coming back into this genre and saying, here I am, I don't care what it is, for me, that's what activism feels like to me.
Has it gotten easier as time goes on? Now that you're more established in your career, you've been doing it for a while, and the world is constantly changing, right? So these blueprints are only as relevant as the times in which they exist. And of course, there's a lot of change and so forth. You gain a lot of experience, you gain some network, you gain connection, you gain confidence, you gain skills. Yeah. And does it feel less like a challenge these days or more like a challenge? Like how has that changed?
It still hasn't changed. It's the same challenge it's still exactly the same. There's still roadblocks and glass ceilings that I have to break through that normally someone who went through this whole blueprint wouldn't have to break through those things. And it's fine for me. Again, it's fine for me because it allows me to show up as my authentic self and say, here I am, no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I still remember this moment when I was on a stage doing a talk and this guy comes up to me, he's an Asian man, and he says, hey, nice to see another Asian person here. I'm like, what? Are we the only two? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, that's true. And then he was saying like, yeah, have you never noticed that like in most keynotes, you'll rarely find an Asian man leading a non-traditional life standing on a stage. It's usually like an engineer or someone who's like a tech founder or something. But you don't have these creative folks or people living a divergent lifestyle. And I was just like, I just never thought about that. And I think because as a byproduct of having lived in so many places, like when I was in China, I was a Canadian guy. And then when I was in Canada, I was a Chinese guy. And so and then when I was in the US, I was like the Chinese Canadian guy. And so it never felt like, I almost don't walk through the world and see myself as an Asian person. I walk through the world and I see myself as just like some middle-aged, like awkward dude that like sometimes knows what he's doing.
Like most of us.
Exactly. Like most of us. And so I don't even know if these ceilings exist and that like I don't notice them. And I think it's so interesting to hear how this is something that's so present and omnipresent. And once again, I can maybe try to point towards privilege. And the privilege is simply that I had parents that really loved me. We grew up really poor, but I never knew that we were poor because we always had food on the table. We never had to like worry about anything. And I got an education, and that education enabled me to create a safety net. And my parents have somehow managed to crawl their way up from lower class to like upper middle class. And so I always have a home to go back to if I need it. And so I have the privilege of an upper middle class household, even if I didn't come from one. And with that, it's almost like I've never had to question the ceilings that I've bumped into. And so it's really interesting. And I wonder if part of that is because you've gone into a traditional, like classical music is a very rigid structure. Yeah. And I've just gone down this weird art activism route that doesn't actually have an industry that has not yet been defined. And so I haven't bumped into those things, but maybe as I think about, I want to enter the art world, I want to start figuring out how to get access to that money. And then I'm encountering all the folks that like went to get like an MFA in some fancy bougie institution and be like, I can't get into these rooms. Maybe I will start experiencing exactly what you're describing. I just haven't gone that way yet. So it's fascinating.
You brought up an interesting polarity of a formal education versus more of a winging it, non-brick and mortar. What are some of the upsides and downsides of each?
For me, I thought it was all downside that I didn't have the formal education. At one point, like I thought I was at a massive disadvantage for many years. And then when I decided to sit down and just be as creative as possible, just here is what's in my mind, here's what's in my heart, here's what's in my soul. I'm going to put it down on paper and see what it does. And I began to realize that the fact that I didn't have the formal education became my superpower. It's actually the thing that's propelling me forward is the fact that I am just doing things because I feel them. I have a cousin, Dr. Bill Banfield, and he's studied, he's a doctorate in music, and he's a classical composer extraordinaire. And he always sits down with me. He goes, how are you doing this? And I say, I don't know. But I think there's so much power in that I don't know. And you need to figure out why you're doing this. And I'm saying, I think I don't want to figure out why I'm doing this. I think I want to keep shooting from the hip because it feels like me.
Was he talking about like an intention?
No, he's more talking about like, how are you hearing this? That's what he says. This is, I think he said it was like 20th century romanticism. Like, how are you playing this in here? Have you played these pieces? Have you played Rachmaninoff? I said, no. Have you played Chopin? Some. Have you played some Beethoven? Some, but not a lot. Like, it's not, I don't have the big college repertoire under my belt. It's just me saying, okay, these are kids that are in my life and they're really cool. And look how they're playing. And what does that sound like or feel like? Okay. And look at them. Wow. They're playing with each other and they're of different races and colors and creeds and everything. Wow. What does that feel like? And then I sit down at the piano and I create that. So it's not like I'm saying, okay, I have to use Beethoven sonata form or this, that. It's none of that. I don't even know what that is. I'm just basically just authentically creating what I feel needs to be put out into the world.
We have such different creative processes. It's amazing.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into yours.
I love it. I want to know about yours. I so want to know about your
Oh my
creative
gosh.
process.
So I think one thing is that I create art, but I don't think like an artist. I actually act much more like a designer. So a designer actually needs to understand what the constraints are. Like, what problem are you solving for? And so I don't actually do anything for fun. I don't tap into any internal power and be like, oh yeah, like, this needs to exist in the world. It's actually the complete opposite. I just spend all my time talking to people, trying to understand like what the different systems at play are. And when I figure out that, oh, I think art could help solve that problem in a way that I can create it, whether it's a story or an installation or a piece, then I will go out and create that thing to solve that problem, or try to solve that problem, right? Try to contribute to the movement in some way, shape, or form. And so there's actually, when I listen to what you're saying, it's amazing. It's making me realize that there is a power in the way that you're speaking, because there's this like internal sense of trust and understanding of who one is and what their place in the world is. And that in the way that you show up, and 100% you embrace that, and then you put that out into the world in a way that is, I'm like, there is a lot of power there that I have not tapped into, primarily because I haven't thought that way. And so I'm actually thinking there's like a whole thing to explore in the fact that I am this Chinese, Canadian, Malaysian living in the United States, leading this non-traditional life, that I probably just like never even realized that, oh, there's something here that I can really help other people with if I just understand what that is first.
Just that story alone is amazing.
Well, there's
all the things
there.
that you are, and wow.
Yeah. So if I just figure out what demographic am I a part of, and what are their challenges, and how can I support that, there's a whole secondary layer of activism that I have never tapped into. So that feels really fascinating to me. Yeah. But I'm also, similar to you, never studied art. I studied hard rock mining engineering. That was my day job. And then I picked up a camera because a girl broke up with me. Go breakups.
Yeah, good for work.
I ended up in a desert looking up at the stars. I was like, stars are pretty. I am going to shoot myself if I don't find something to do. And so I just decided that I was just going to take pictures of the stars. And lo and behold, this random hobby ended up growing to something greater. And then one day woke up and I was like, oh, wait, this isn't what I want to do. I know I don't want to be an engineer. In 10 years, earning more money, sitting at a bigger desk. I don't know what I want to do. It doesn't feel like photography. I'm going to survive on it, but I know what I don't want to do. So I better quit that and figure it out. And then this like 1 year sabbatical turned into a 15-year career, or whatever it's at now, going from photography to video to art installations and, you know, whatever it is I am now. And so it's just wild how these things shape up. And I'm actually finding myself wanting to move into a more established system, because I want people to understand how I fit into the ecosystem, because I want their money. And when you look at the world of money, it's almost like when you go out and you're planning on, I don't know, buying clothes, then you're in the mindset of spending money on clothes, or you're in the mindset of spending money on art. There are these pools of money that are pre-allocated that if you can tap into, then you can start creating the things that you want to do. But if you're not, you don't fit in a category that people like don't know what they're looking at. They're like, oh, this is like a pair of sunglasses that you can also wear on your head. I feel like that's weird. I feel like that's what my art is in the art world, because it's on the intersection of too many things. And so I don't have an answer for this, what's better, art or formal art world or not, but I have this curiosity to break into this space. And I don't know how one does that. I don't have any comparative data.
It wasn't like a what's better. It was just the upside and downside of each.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is I similarly, I sit at the intersection of some very strange things. Like we're saying classical music, but the title is really neoclassical music. Why? Because I'm taking my experiences. I toured with Justin Timberlake. I toured with Rihanna. I toured with John Mayer. I toured with Cirque du Soleil. So I'm taking all of these things, all of these experiences. And I always make this analogy. I say, my music, the cake of it is classical music. All the icing and decoration is all these other things. I'm a hip hop kid. So you get influences of hip hop in my music. You get influences of blues and jazz and so many other genres and these things that I've studied. Again, not formally, but hey, Marcus Belgrave, the jazz trumpeter extraordinaire, lives down the street. Let me go, hey, Mr. Belgrave, can you teach me something? Yeah, come down and learn. My whole life has been knocking on doors and saying, hey, I want to learn what you're doing. How do I do that? So very much it resonates with me saying that I'm in this intersection. And again, the money is behind the things that they know.
Right.
Right now, there are donors for symphonies all over the world because they know the music. They know this classical music. They know exactly what they're going to get. And then I'm sitting at this intersection of something that's, yeah, you're doing what we do, but you got gold grills in your mouth. What's that about? So it's a
But then it gets you into really cool rooms. So it's because you're unique, it gets you to all these cool spaces. So it's like, it's both.
Yeah.
It's both great and frustrating.
Exactly. Oh, extremely frustrating.
But I do think that like with age, the older I get, the more networked I get, the more access it seems to open up. And so it still feels like a shortcut. And at the very least, it feels like the journey is more fun than just constantly having to break through like the next level of gatekeepers and the next level of gatekeepers after that. I don't know. That's my hypothesis. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's just weird.
It's just weird.
It's just weird.
Yeah. But I do have a question for you there. So if we took your activism and we brought it into my world, I'm curious, have you ever thought about how your activism, the way you show up, like how do you like embed that into a broader conversation around, let's say, wealth polarization or misinformation or reparations or even things that like extend beyond like more macro issues where you talk about, I don't know, famine across the world or peace and justice? Do you ever think about these wider issues and feel, I don't know, like for me, sometimes I feel frustrated that I'm an artist. I'm like, I wish I could design an engineered solution for a thing rather than just trying to raise awareness for it. So I don't know, like how do you navigate the nuance between sometimes just showing up exactly as who you are and maybe the feeling of that not being enough?
I'll give you a great example. So my latest album is called 9. It's about the Little Rock 9, who were the first 9 Black kids to break the color barrier in public schools in America. The album as a whole was a tribute to 9, but each of the titles, each of the songs is a prompt for thought. There's one called Toddlers Don't Care About Race. There's another one called Heat Island. A lot of people don't know what a heat island is. But a heat island is from redlining communities. It would be hotter in the ghetto than it would be in the suburbs because of the tree canopy. Again, higher utility bills, more outages, which of course lead to
quality,
more deaths.
Yeah.
These are people dying because they don't have trees. I have a piece called Injustice, which is about the injustices that happen to African Americans all over this country. So the activism is built inside of the message. To me, it's all about how can I tell this story from a perspective of an inclusive Black man living in this country at this time. I know we talk about the greats in classical music, and they wrote things that were specific to their time. I think the thing that's lacking in classical music is that people are not writing things that are specific for our time. We're still playing the stuff from the 1800s. That's their music. That's not our music. We need to start expressing and telling our story through this music. So I think that's where the bigger activism piece comes in, is the messaging behind everything that I'm putting out.
And then how do you connect that to the actual change that you want to see, or policy or governments or movements, or
you show up at Hatch?
You show up at you can solve that this weekend.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a mission, baby. I'm on a mission.
Yeah. I hope you're going to be playing some of this music
Absolutely.
right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In this podcast, you got to play the music.
What are some examples of art projects that have really challenged social norms and sparked important conversations?
I'll start with just a piece that I've created that has somehow become like this phenomenon in this current movement that I'm doing. So Plastic has been one of the issues that I have focused a lot on. I've done all sorts of weird things like putting a mermaid on 10,000 plastic bottles or creating a Guinness World Record art installation out of 168,000 plastic straws that we collected over 9 months. And these projects are great. They raise a lot of awareness. They get a bunch of views, but then ultimately it's not really moving the needle because ultimately awareness doesn't always lead to change. Sometimes awareness just means that more people are aware of the problem and more people are frustrated, but nothing actually changes. And so at one point, after having been in the movement for long enough and just hearing how different people are talking, I noticed that nonprofits and most of the activist group kept using this phrase, talking about how we needed to turn off the plastic tap, because if a bathroom, your bathtub was flooding, the first step would not be to like do cleanups and wipe up the bathtub. You'd want to first turn off the tap, turn off the faucet. And so I ended up creating this 3-story tall version of that where it looked like one of those levitating faucets, except plastics were spewing out all over that. And the first time I did it, it was fairly successful on social media, but it didn't actually like hit any policymakers. And so I ended up recreating it a second and then a third time. And the third time was at the United Nations headquarters. We had to like fundraise for it. We collected 3 tons of plastics from a local slum. We hired hundreds of local ladies to help us like clean, sort, organize, string it together. And then at 5 p.m. on a Friday night, we managed to get permission from the United Nations to build it at 8 a.m. on Sunday. By this point, we're committed. We're just like, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. And we end up going there, building this 4-story tall version of this exact same thing. And it's the one art piece that's welcoming like 1,500 delegates from 193 different countries who are there to figure out how do we tackle and solve single-use plastic pollution or just plastic pollution broadly. And this piece ends up being used by government officials, for-profits, nonprofits, like in all sectors, to talk about why they're there and what they're working on. And the symbol becomes so successful, in fact, that it gets used by the White House, by the United Nations Environmental Assembly when they put out their plastic reports, by Greenpeace, by WWF. And it's just become this like quintessential thing where the art has totally outgrown me. Like a bunch of people don't even know who created it. And okay, so that would be like the thing that I feel like I've created that was the most successful. And yet I think if it didn't exist, I don't know what would change. I don't know if the world would be at a different place. I still think this treaty would have been signed. It would have been good. It's just that now everyone has like a really emotional and visual anchor to the movement. And I was just at the Global Plastic Treaty negotiations that have continued in Ottawa, and we were invited to recreate that same piece a second time. And it's the same thing that has happened. And so it's like on the front of all these newspapers consistently. And I'm just like, okay, this is good. And I still don't know what it's done. And I feel like as an artist, you just don't know. You don't even know who's posted it, who's shared it, who's been touched by it, and what it's shifted. And it's this really weird relationship where the artist can never actually know the impact of the art that they've created. And I don't know if I really have a story of an art piece that like truly influenced me or that I've seen that has really made me feel anything in particular. Like you can point to images that, for example, are credited for ending the Vietnam War, like the self-immolation photo of the monk or the shot where this general is like shooting a general like point blank range and so forth. These really powerful images. But I don't know if I like necessarily relate to them and say, oh, this is because it's such a different medium. So yeah, I guess I'll stop there and throw it over to you.
It's pretty tough to go. I can't follow that one up, dude. I think for me, it's more, I guess my philosophy is a little bit more hand-to-hand combat. And one of the things that I think that a project that I'm working on is just playing in front of people. One of the things that I get at shows are volunteers or people who work there and say, you know what, this is the most diverse crowd we've ever had. And I think when I hear those words, that's when I know the art is working. Or when I hear someone after the show that says, you made me cry. I hadn't thought about this in this many years. Or you made me think about my grandmother who passed away 5 years ago. And I'm saying, okay, those are like these kind of hand-to-hand combat touch points that let me know that this is working. This is something that not only touches people in a very spiritual way, but it actually is something that's being spread in a community of people. Because then you hear those same people say, oh yeah, the next time I'm coming, I'm going to bring my friends and I'm going to bring my grandmother and I'm going to bring my dogs and cats and everything. So I think that's more than anything is for me is just the performance and being able to be the most vulnerable that I can be in front of a group of people. I think I always say that I like to stand in front of people and take my chest and just open it and just let people see my heart and my soul and my problems and my stresses and my successes and everything that is contained inside of me as a human being. And I think that for me, in classical music, as it is very much based in perfection, but for me, it's not based in perfection. It's based in humanity. How human can I be in front of you as opposed to how perfect can I be in front of you? So I think that for me, just playing live, playing in front of more people is the project that kind of shows me where the good that I'm doing in the world. And hopefully that it spreads, it goes into new places and new spaces and more people hear it. And I'm able to affect people in a really cool way, especially younger people who we have this massive identity crisis going on due to, we'll say it, due to social media, and so much is going on. And some of these kids that come to my shows, they say, you're my hero. I want to be able to play just like you. And I always say, don't play like me, play like you. That's what's important, is that you be who you are and don't be influenced by anyone else. Be influenced by what you are and what's in your heart and what you want to express. Yeah. So
I'm curious, how do you make sure that your performance spread? Or how do you design that into your experiences? Because it sounds like that's what really brings you alive and how you like touch people. And I also love how you talk about how much of yourself you pour into it. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. It's just, it's one of those things where you have to have that trust that it will naturally spread. Like me being just, like I said, 100% me will naturally spread because it's not something that people don't see. A lot of times, I'll say this, and this may be a little controversial, is that I don't think a lot of times people show up fully. And when you're able to show up fully, it's whoa. It's shocking almost, especially in the day and age we live in. It's exceedingly shocking now. But I think that's the most important aspect of being a live performer, is being able to translate a message or an ideal with your instrument, and that ideal spreads. Just the honesty of it, I think, is the thing that's the hook.
Man, I just love how everything that you say always comes back down to personal power. Whereas I just intellectualize everything. And it's almost, I think, like a marketer. And I'm like, all right, I'll read a book like Made to Stick or Contagious. And it'll talk about how things need to have like emotional hooks. And I don't know, if you're going to create content for TikTok or Instagram, it needs to like hit you within the first couple of seconds. There needs to be a question, and then you need to do this stuff. And they have all these like frames.
Yeah.
But then what you're just saying, you're just like, just be yourself, bro.
Yep.
You got this.
Literally. Yeah. It's just, I couldn't have said it better. Just be yourself. Bro.
Yeah. Which is why I'm like,
got this.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why I'm like, oh man, I have so much to learn here. There's this whole untapped thing. And recently so I live in this 17-person co-living community, and there's a lot of interesting people that live there. One of the ladies is an actress. So again, a performer. And I wanted to practice one of my talks on her. And in the talk, I need you to, every slide that you put up there when you talk about your work and you're stitching it together, I want you to take me there as if like you had just experienced this photo being taken and the marvel of it that was there like the first time you saw it. Because you're just going, oh yeah, so then you like tied a model 30 meters under a shipwreck, and then and that was good, and then after that I went to this, and I was like, no, like I need a pause. You need to take me there. We need to feel it. And it's basically echoing everything that you're saying, and I'm like, okay, a lot to learn too. There. Yeah, to pause and let people be there, and to help them, take them on that journey so that they can understand what it was really like, because there's something really phenomenal here and you're just glazing through it because it's like this distant memory from 10 years ago. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
It's so funny you say it. Like you said, pause. I think one of the things that I think a gift that I have is the ability to be silent. I'm a musician, and people think that means playing music. It does, but it also means the gift of silence. Silence is like I always say, the sweet spot is when you're not playing anything. And that's when when Marcellus has this thing, he says, that's when you pull people in, is when you're not doing anything. So sometimes, that pause that she spoke of is just so important. It's the meat and potatoes. It's literally what you're not saying that's more important than what you're saying.
Yeah. Reminds me of that Japanese word, ma, which is the word to describe the space between the notes.
Yeah.
There's a Japanese word for that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I learn something every day.
Yeah.
I love that. Are there any ethical considerations that artists should take into account when creating art around activism?
I think with the work I do, yes. Like the first project I ever did to talk about plastic pollution, for example, where I put a mermaid on 10,000 plastic bottles. I was recent to the space. So I was just sharing all the information that I currently had. And you learn things along the way. But so this video I created got 36 million views on Facebook. And I talked about how like a plastic bottle would take 450 years to disappear, only to realize like a bunch of years later, oh, actually, it's not true. That's like a misnomer. Like plastic actually never disappears. It just breaks down to smaller and smaller, like microparticles and nanoparticles. And this idea of degradability of plastic is actually like completely false. And so you end up in these worlds where like right now at the global treaty negotiations, there are these huge, like nuanced conversations where corporations and countries, or actually mostly countries, are trying to prevent restrictions on the production of primary polymers of plastics versus focusing on plastic pollution. And so one might say, oh, doesn't addressing plastic pollution include all of that? Actually not. Like there's like these like, once you get into the policy world, there are all these really tiny nuances that start coming to play. You start like trying to include the voices of the marginalized, like the 20 million waste pickers that are there. You have the indigenous and black and brown folks that are disproportionately affected by these issues that need to have a voice. And so like how their voices are represented within these discussions when you do have a louder voice than others, like all these start coming into play. And in the work that I do, that and all that starts to be like really important. Which, once again, back to the piece around like identity and stuff, I can't just go out and say, or I feel like I can't just go out and say whatever I want because feel like I have all this pressure and responsibility. And I'm still really curious I need to process this conversation and figure out how to tap into your power and still stay responsible. Yeah. Like there's this duality here that I'm really interested in diving into.
Yeah. This is music. We're talking about ethics and music. Yeah. Good luck with that. Like, yeah. But for me personally, it just comes down to who I am. I feel that I have to be a role model, and whatever that means, it means that I have to be setting an example. So do that. Set a great example. Be the person that you would want the artist that you would want to see. Be that person. Again, comes back to just being.
Your life is so easy. I love
just
it.
Me. A lot of me.
Would you both create if no one saw it?
No.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's because like I said, I'm a designer.
Yeah. Okay.
I create because I need the art itself to have a meaning beyond my own desire to create it.
Okay.
And actually, it's been really hard for me to find a hobby. Actually, like ever since I picked up photography for a decade, I just had no hobbies. I had nothing that I did because I think I live in a very intersectional way. So one of the things that I think has helped my career progress was that like I would always try to stack things as much as possible. So I want to have fun, yes, but I want to have fun while I'm networking, while I'm out there like getting inspired, while I'm out there learning something that I have never learned before. While like I'm always trying to stack things. And so I just wouldn't have hobbies because a hobby is I want to go camping because I like camping. And all that got eliminated when I hopped onto this entrepreneurial journey. And it's only recently that I've started to figure that out. And so I do anticipate in a couple years, as I lean into my identity power, that these hobbies will start re-emerging in my life.
Absolutely.
Because like actually one of my recent hobbies is contact dancing. So it's a form of improvisational dance that has nothing to do with anything else that I do. And yet it brought me so much joy and so much connection with myself, my body. And there's something here. Like I said, I know there's the whole thing that I've been missing out on that I need to reconnect to.
Wow. But I don't mean to cut you off. What's so interesting is when we first met, what did you do first?
Yeah.
A dancer.
You said dancer. Yeah.
I saw that part.
That's right.
That's the first thing I saw in you.
That's so
was
funny.
this kind of graceful, like a dancer. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And it's your hobby.
But it's actually, it's the one thing that I do. I picked it up over the last 2 years, and it's the one thing that I just do, and I just have so much. It's like a moving meditation for me. And I've learned so much from it, right? Just exploring like my own personal curiosity, I've learned so much. I learned about all these like childhood traumas around entering a dance floor when you're young and feeling awkward and so forth. That same thing plays out when you're in a jam and you're like trying to enter a space. Like, how do I enter? Or maybe you're dancing with a person and you're two people, you're moving together. And then like contact improv is all about maintaining one point of contact with a person, but that it could be then 2 people or 3 or 5 or 10. And so it's a very dynamic thing. And so I might be dancing with a person, I'm having a great time, and a third person comes in and suddenly they're off dancing. And I'd be like, this feeling of abandonment or of needing to own like ownership of another person, or story that you've lost something when I actually never owned it to begin with. Like all these stories around social dynamics that I was able to like confront within myself in a space that has no stakes, because I don't know anyone's name, I don't care, and yet I would still have all these feelings come out, has been like so healing. So yeah, there's something yeah.
I love that for you. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I definitely have hobbies. Listen, the craziest thing is this, and I always say that I'm like this weird animal that no one's ever seen before. So I'm a Black kid from the inner city, plays classical music, and listens to hip hop, but I love NASCAR. And that's my hobby. Every Sunday, I drink beer, eat pizza, and rally towel.
Wow.
Or if I go to a race, same thing. Hot dog, beer, and rally towel. And I think that's just, it's like a moment to like, I don't even care. Like nothing, everything in the world doesn't matter. It's just that moment for me to be like authentically who I am again. Just, shirt off, rally towel, and just loving the smell of fuel and tires. Yeah. And again, you went back to, if no one heard the music, would I still do it? Absolutely. Without a doubt. Yes. When I first set out to do my first album, my publisher at the time said, hey, I think you should do a solo piano album. And I literally said, I have no idea what that means, dude. I've been in bands, I've been in the studio making music, and I don't know what that means. Just so happens that Seth Godin was doing a program called the Creatives Workshop. And I entered in the Creatives Workshop, which was a 100-day commitment to do whatever it is you do creatively, and he's going to steer the ship and guide you through all of this. So this is where all of this came from. Initially, I took 121 consecutive days, and I wrote my first album. Again, I had no idea what my voice was. I had no idea what it was going to, I had no direction. It literally, like you said, it's just like doing something. You have no idea what you're doing. And I think I fell in love while I was doing it, that I would do it no matter if no one ever heard it. I think the process is what I'm so in love with. I adore the process of sitting down at the piano and going, all right, I have no idea what I'm going to play. All right, let's put there's E. Okay, maybe that'll work with F sharp. I don't know. So it's this, and as things come together, these small fragments of music and these small fragments of creation come together, I adore that process. And I think, like you said, if no one ever heard it, I would still sit down all the time and just, let me write a new song. Why not?
I think there's a word in there that stood out to me, and that's the word love. It's actually something that I've been trying to change, because the work that I did, I used to love. Because I used to love the adventures and the lifestyle and the people that I would meet, because I was doing all sorts of just crazy creative things all the time. But then I went down that path, figured out how to make a career out of it. I had hundreds of thousands of followers. It felt like that was like what I was supposed to be doing, getting there, and then just feeling like I needed another layer to it. And then from there, the work transformed from love to duty. And then duty combined with a culture of, Asian culture just believes in hard work and struggle. And so actually, like, for the most part, if you like something, you're supposed to struggle for it. And struggle is actually a sign of success. So you combine duty and struggle, and you end up in this like really unhealthy working relationship with the work that you're creating. And recently, because I'm like a really weird environmentalist. Like most environmentalists love the outdoors. They love camping. They love being outside. They'll go out and connect with nature, and they just feel calm. And I'm a city kid. I like being in the city. I like being at home. I like my Wi-Fi. I like my technology. Like I don't really feel the need to go out in nature. And so it really comes from a place of just having sat through way too many documentaries and knowing too much about the issue and being like, oh, we really need to do something. And I'm in a position where I need to do something. So I should do something. And I've been really trying to move myself from a place of struggle to one of ease, from a place of duty into one of love. And I think as I hopefully realign that, and this has become like an active process. Like last year I went on a 1-week wilderness survival training thing just to be out in nature and to change my relationship to nature. And even being here and like being in a tent, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Well, I think it's going to be great. I'm going to feel it's going to be great. Where we have no charging ports in our tents, like nowhere to charge our peripherals. So it's just going to be like a low technology environment. It's going to be great. I'm really trying to actively rewrite that piece, because I think there was a point in my life where I had that exact alignment like you were describing. And actually, when I was in that point, it was a lot easier to be an influencer. It was a lot easier to talk about things just as they were coming up. Whereas like these days, I actually don't really want to talk on social media because I'm like, it's complicated. I don't want to talk about it. And so I don't really share what's going on. And so anyways, it's an active journey. On the one hand, I think it's really enabled me to do really meaningful work that is extremely tactical and practical and contributive to the movement. But then the other half of it is it also has to be sustainable. And I think oddly enough, as I was trying to create work to help the world be more sustainable, I was not thinking about how to make it sustainable for me. And I think one of the key ingredients is to make sure that you love what you do, love the process of what you do. And so that's been on a very active piece of contemplation, as I think many activists actually end up burning themselves out. And I think it's probably because they don't have enough of an overlap between who they are and what they're contributing to, and that identity piece isn't closely aligned enough. So they're not actually taking the time to have their NASCAR day to like just fully be themselves and to do that guilt-free and to celebrate your own identity and how you're showing up in the world and being comfortable in that power.
It's crazy because you mentioned Asian culture, and there's a lot of similarities between Asian culture and Black culture. Hardworking folks, struggle is part of it. Whatever it is you have to do, you must do it. And it's part of the process. But one of the things that really helped me out was understanding that I had to change one word.
What was your word?
Struggle. I had to change struggle to challenge. And it shifted the perspective completely, because to struggle is to start from a place below. To challenge is something you can accept. And just that one switch of terminology literally led me to this place of loving the process, because I was no longer looking at it as, oh my God, it was more like, oh, okay, I could accept that challenge. It's so funny. I had a great talk with my therapist before I did my first show in New York City as Black Bach. It was my first show as Black Bach, and 4 days before I did it, I told her, and I said, and she's the first one that introduced this concept to me. I said, well, Dr. Thomas, I'm having problems. There's certain pieces that I struggle with. She said, wait, you do art. You've been playing the piano for how long? At this point in your life, you don't struggle with anything when it comes to that instrument. Now, it may be a challenge, but it's not a struggle. And for me to like disconnect from that energy, it opened. I played the best show I've ever played. It was my first show. And at the end of the show, I ended up screaming like a little girl because I had nailed it. And it just felt so, and it was freedom. I found freedom from losing struggle and turning it into challenge.
I love that. I think if I had to pick one word that was the most meaningful over the last year, it would be shifting from the word abundance to the word enoughness. And so like we live in Western culture, we're basically one tutorial workshop or experience away from getting whatever you want, whether it's love or success or fame or fortune. Like everyone's promising you that you can get everything that you want. Yeah. And it's true to a certain extent that we live in a time of abundance where anything is possible. And it's also impossible to be abundant in every single aspect of your life all the time. And it just does not happen. And so if you're pursuing abundance across all the axes of your life, then you end up ultimately never quite being satisfied because you don't get a sense of what you're supposed to prioritize. And flipping it around to like enoughness. Do I have enough to do what is truly important to me? And you need to be able to answer that question, of course. But do you have enough? Then you can actually go through one at a time and be like, do I have enough money to keep doing what I do? Yes. And of course, it would be nice to have more, but I do have enough. And you can go through these different verticals, and chances are there's only one or two things that you don't have enough of. And that's great. Now you can focus on those, rise up to the challenge, and just fill in those gaps. And then suddenly, if you have enough of everything you need to thrive, then the success can almost take care of itself. Because you're creating the conditions for success to happen rather than pursuing this idea of what you think success is. And I think that's been like a really helpful reframe for me over the last year.
That's a great reframe. I'm taking that one.
Yeah, good. I wrote down yours too. I'm like, I need to remember this challenge one. I like it. Yeah. Struggle and challenge.
Yeah.
I like that. Reframing is important.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
How far should activism go?
How far should it go? I think so I'm vegan. And I think how far activism should go as a vegan is don't be the angry vegan. But I think activism should go as far as you can be the person that someone still wants to sit next to the campfire and hang out with you. Like you want people to come and hang out, and you want them to be curious, and you want them to want to learn more about you. You don't want to tell them why they're the terrible and they're part of a system that's like tearing them down. And people are just like, I don't want to hang out with you. You suck. And so I think that the boundary is basically like, if all your friends, if the only people you can hang out with are the radical people that look and think exactly the same as you do, then you're probably not doing it right. I think you want to, or maybe that's actually too far of a statement, because it's important to have all kinds of people in the world. So actually the people that are really pushing the boundaries are just as important as the others. But I think the mass of people, like a healthy place to be for the masses, is to be one where you are both willing to change your own mind and willing to help others see your perspective. To do that in like a way that assumes that everyone is just trying to be the best human they possibly can be. That's my answer to that.
Yeah, said. I mean, for me, it's just, again, you want to be the person that people can be around. But as well, you definitely want to stand up for what you believe in, but you don't want to be so grounded in your beliefs that you can't hear anything else. I think we live in a country now of an overload of cognitive dissonance. Like people are totally believing something and then doubling down on their beliefs because someone else believes something different. I think that it's just a lack of dialogue, a lack of actual understanding, a lack of sitting down and having a decent conversation. My father's a great example. A lot of people, politically, he doesn't get along with a lot of people, but he's always able to sit down and have a conversation and talk about the things that matter to him, and he'll listen to the things that matter to you. So I think there's this thing about a great balance that should happen.
Yeah, I think Adam Grant has a book on it. I can't remember the title, but it's all about how we need to think differently. And I think a fun question to ask at probably a dinner party is, oh, when's the last time you changed your mind and on what? And it, oddly enough, like many people don't have an answer because they're actively trying to challenge their beliefs because it's uncomfortable to do that. But I think that's one of the best ways to grow, right? To be curious, to seek out diverse perspectives, to learn, to understand, to be humble and curious. I think there's probably more greater virtue, but that's like a great virtue to have. And it's one of the kinds of people that I love to hang out with are the ones that are curious and they just want to know. They just want to understand.
What's the best advice you have for someone who is considering breaking into art and activism?
If you have an art practice, try to figure out how it can mean just as much as it means to you as it can mean to other people. Right? I think I wish more people like lived into their art and in a more like systemic societal level, and we're thinking about how their art could like weave into a more multi-layered approach, similar to like where I'm at. Probably because I feel lonely. I don't meet many people doing what I'm doing. But I don't know. Listening to Black Box, I'm like, his life sounds better than mine. So I think y'all should go pursue his form of art and activism and not mine. Mine's weighty, man.
I would say just do it. Like, it's really one of those things where find something that matters to you, find the way you want to tell the story, and then tell the story. I think if there's something that matters to you, it's important to you, and it's important for you to speak about it, do that. Use your art and use your creativity in every way you know how, and experiment and test the edges and corners of what it is you do, and speak. You have a voice. I think that's the one thing about art that's so amazing, is that you have a voice, and there's someone waiting to hear your voice. Someone somewhere is waiting to hear your voice. Just take the commitment to expressing yourself and doing your most honest work. And I think that it all comes out in the wash.
I love it.
This is so good.
Yeah.
I'm Tay Chamberlain. This is the Hatch Podcast. We are at Arcosanti at the Hatch Experience. Black Box, Benjamin, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for
having us.
Yeah.
We came into today with a question. How do you show up and actually influence something? How do you move through a system that wasn't built for you? Or fight for something that can't fight for itself? Here's what stayed with me. Neither of these guys had a blueprint. Benjamin von Wong didn't wait for the right platform or the perfect moment of cultural readiness. He built images so large, so viscerally uncomfortable, so impossible to scroll past that the conversation had to happen. He made that. Black Box walked into concert halls that had no formal reason to let him in. No conservatory degree, no traditional credential, just an unshakable, self-taught certainty about who he was and what he was there to do. The power of not knowing what you're doing, it turns out, is that nobody can tell you you're doing it wrong. That's not naivety, that's strategy. And it works. Not in spite of the audacity, but because of it. One man fighting for the planet, one man rewriting who gets to belong in a room. Different missions, different tools. Same refusal to wait for permission. You don't change a system by asking it nicely. You change it by showing up. Fully, specifically, inconveniently yourself, until the system has no choice but to move. Thanks again to Benjamin Von Wong and Blackbach for joining me today. Again, Blackbach did the theme music for this season of Arcosanti with Hatch, and it's awesome. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
It seems now more than ever that we have found ourselves on the cusp of monumental worldwide change. Whether we consider the environment, politics, infrastructure, health, economics, or inequities across a broad swath of social constructs, the consensus is clear and urgent. All is not as it should be. The United Nations, a consortium of 193 member states from around the globe, agrees. In 2015, the UN unanimously adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. These goals call for urgent action and global partnership to secure peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future.
In alignment with the SDGs, Hatch, a curated network of artists, activists, and entrepreneurs working together to accelerate positive global change, has partnered with I Am Interchange to fuse adventure journalism with experiential design labs to develop innovative solutions to complex global challenges. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoy it, please subscribe or leave us a rating. This episode was produced by Yara Craner, Susan Karstensen, and me, Tate Chamberlain. A shout out to our media and production team, Jessica Byerly, Darko Sevilla, Jacob Desch, Sean Mackinson, Amin Yarsu, and Zane Giordano. A special thanks to Yara Craner, Jared Silverman, Kirk Euclid, Roshi Gavechi, Eitan Shapira, Pete Strom, Reem Haddad, Cole Jansen, Tom Silverman, Raymond Ansodagi, Mark Gerner, Adam Taylor, Erica Mackey, Elke Govertson, Anya Bulis, Bradley Honeyquill, and the rest of the Hatch team and crew from Arcosanti. Thank you for hosting me. To learn more about Hatch, visit hatchexperience.org. Building community could not happen without food. And with that, I'd like to thank Whistle Pig Korean, Red Tractor Pizza, and Zocalo Coffee House. Remember, share airtime and don't ruin dinner.